keeps going sideways this time, I don't think there will be a comeback to this. And that's so sad because these people could have a beautiful home that would accommodate the members of the family who have disabilities. And there could be help there, and it would be a clean environment for them. And they deserve that. And it would be so much better to have that situation than having, if Betty were to pass away tomorrow, but those poor people will be put in care homes, and Timmy is, maybe a group home or something, and the environment might be cleaner and better, but that family loves each other. And that would be sad, but that in reality, that's what would happen. And to do something to, just railroad the process that was going on is just unbelievable to me. I mean, I maybe it's just not the capacity to understand, what they were actually being given. And maybe they're just not capable of it. I don't think they're capable of managing the money, but that was going to be set up to where it was managed for them. So from where I come from, and probably most of the people here come from, we can't understand that way of thinking. And it's just so sad to me. So, I think if something doesn't happen now and this is not a success, I don't think in the future that anybody would want to donate.
Kelly says, I'm here for support. I'm so angry at Larry and BJ's selfishness. And Robert says, who went through the soft white underbelly money? Being from southern West Virginia, I could retire from that amount. Must be some rich drug dealers in the area.
Well, we all saw that video of BJ's boyfriend holding hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and just saying, this is what you get when you work hard. About a few days after Larry's camper mysteriously burned down and burned up the money that he was holding for Betty, safekeeping. So makes you wonder.
Anon 14107 says, consider what Mark, soft white underbelly, did. Similar experience as what we're currently seeing.
Yes, it is. It's almost a repeat occurrence. And um, there was a guy on here on the panel last night, and he brought up a really good point. He said if you listen to the interview that Mark did with one of the nephews, Jason Whittaker, I think, and if you listen to what Eric was saying, it's almost just the same tone of voice and the very same words. So, I can understand how Mark felt, and I can certainly understand how Eric feels right now.
Bad Betty says, TG, you put me in timeout, really? And TG says, no, Betty. Prepared for Eternity Homestead says, Patrick has a ton of reels on Facebook. He really spends a lot of time with Timmy.
Yeah, he does. And Timmy just loves Patrick. He loves him, and he was so attached to Eric as well. I mean, I feel if there's any victim, anyone in this whole thing that does, Ray and Lorraine deserve so much better, but Timmy has a lot of life left. Timmy's not. I live by a road, and I'm outside, and I'm hear these cars. I'm sorry if you heard they're loud, but Timmy has so much potential to be around people who can really help him. And the more Timmy has people helping him learn and do things, people, he is going to improve so much more. It would be a shame that Timmy's future is going to be sitting on that porch, even though they love each other and he loves his mama. his future is going to be sitting on that porch, coloring in a coloring book, and that's it pretty much. And to me, that is the saddest thing. I mean, if
Florida.
even
Oh, go ahead.
but even if Lorraine was placed in like a nursing, a care home of some kind, Timmy could go visit her anytime he wanted to. So I don't think after a while that Timmy would be okay with that. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no. I was just trying. I thought you were done. I'm just trying to read you
I
some
am. I'm
comments.
done. I'm done.
Denise says BJ told Mark her father died to get money from Mark, but she was shocked when Mark showed up and seen her father wasn't dead.
Oh yeah. Mark got on a plane and he flew to West Virginia. And when he got out of the car, Larry and BJ were getting out of their car, and BJ beelined it into that camper. Oh, she did. She was almost running to get in there. And Larry played dumb, of course. Uh, Mark said, "Larry, is that what you're wearing to your funeral?" And of course, Larry goes, "What?" and denied knowing anything about what BJ had uh, that he was what she was doing. So, and then Betty evidently he had asked BJ to put Betty on the phone the day before or whenever when she had first called when she called him asking for money to buy them clothes, and Betty also lied to Mark and told him, yeah, Larry had died. And it's all in that video. But Mark handled that with the most class I could imagine. Um, and then offered, after all that, offered to pay for BJ to go to rehab and also for her boyfriend to go. Mark did everything he could do for those people. And I think Mark really cared for them.
Ashley1111 says Eric wasn't going to be constant. He was there to get the ball rolling and I'm sure would help out when he could.
Yeah, Patrick wanted Eric to come on board. So, because Eric knows how to get the social media out there. He knows how to, and he's got a lot of connections that he's networked with that could be of help, you know, from his channel. He knows a lot of people. And Patrick wanted to get Eric for that side of things. And that was smart, I think, on Patrick's part because I'm sure Patrick, was not as knowledgeable. And Eric knows how to, get it out there on social media and, to get fundraising going on. And Eric, he gets things done. And it may have went too fast, but he knew what to do and had people who could contact people to get to get the ball rolling. And of course, he lives in Georgia. That's his home, and he he couldn't be in West Virginia all the time. But I do feel like he would have been a frequent visitor there. And I know that after he came and he really just fell in love with Timmy. And I feel like that if things had kept going the way that they have been planned, that Patrick would have been a bit more constant in Timmy's life.
Prep for Eternity Homestead says makes you wonder what happens to Timmy when his mother passes. There seems to be another aunt I seen on a family tree video.
That's a big question. What happens if Betty were to die today? What what's going to happen to Ray? What's going to happen to Lorraine? And what's going to happen to Timmy? They can't stay there in the home. No one's there to take. Well, I mean, I feel like that they would be put somewhere.
Cindy sent another super sticker, and Mima says, just checking, need to stay quiet and in the dark till my head is straight, not myself yet. So sorry you're going through that, Mima. I can't
Yeah.
imagine having those many migraines.
Oh, that must be terrible. Prayers for you, Mima. I hope you feel better really soon.
Ashley1111 says this falls in Larry's lap every time. Betty follows suit. Scared or not, shame on her.
I just wish Betty would think of, could look into the future a little bit and understand she's scared they're going to take the family away from her. What does she think the family's going to do without her? Really, I don't think that she is understands that. I think that Betty could have stood up and said, "No, this is what's going on here." You know, she didn't have to lie, and I think this is just a pattern over the years for Betty. And I think Betty just goes with whoever she's with at the time, just to keep the least amount of chaos possible.
Jesus Freak says there is amazing life skills day programs with transportation provided, paid my medical. Timmy should be in one now.
Timmy, you're right. Timmy should have been in something years ago. Timmy's 46, and Timmy did go to school. He graduated high school, and he was in special ed programs all through school, and he did have resources there, I'm sure. And it sounds like that the day Timmy graduated, they just nobody did anybody look in on Timmy again? Was he did, did he have a social worker? Or did the Whittakers just say, no, he's not going to do any of these things? But there had to be some kind of a program somewhere he could have been involved in. And I haven't heard anything, about what Timmy has done for the last, 20 some years, other than just be there.
Bad Betty says, has anyone heard from Nocturna Boo? She hasn't been here for a while. I'm getting worried about her. Kelly Owen says Eric had rehab all set up for BJ and she ignored him.
Yeah. He even offered to pay for her and her boyfriend as well. So that's two people who have offered that to her. And well, you see, she evidently didn't take them, either one up on the offer.
TG Chicago says, Betty, I saw Nocturna on another channel this week. And Wilma says, I seen her somewhere commenting last night, I think, Betty. Let's see. Bob Apples, I don't know. It could be a few days before we hear from Eric, especially if he's back home unwinding with his family as he should be doing.
Now, I'm not sure he went back home because he was taking his friend back to the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I don't know why they flew into Charlotte. It would have been closer to have flown into Charleston or somewhere in West Virginia, but evidently they flew into Charlotte, and he had to go pick them up from Charlotte, and then he was on his way taking them to the airport. But I think he planned to go back to West Virginia. But whether he did or not, I don't know. And Patrick hasn't said, Patrick said on his live that he had not talked to Eric. So maybe Eric is just taking a few days to get his head straight around everything. Because I imagine, he's pretty upset about it. But I hope he comes back in some form or fashion. Maybe he just taking some time to think it through.
Florida Life in the Sun says, we all know that BJ was never going to just be gone. This family will stick together, good or bad. Betty is keeping her promise to her deceased parents to take care of siblings, including Larry.
Sadly
RM.
enough,
Oh,
it's
go ahead.
probably true. Yeah, I don't, it's just a pattern. It seems to be a pattern in what they do. Sad, and it's sad.
RM Guy says Larry and BJ would probably keep them in home to keep getting their money, but they wouldn't take care of them.
That's probably true. Um, Larry, I think, is in control of their checks. I think that he's like someone has to be a responsible person, like for the checks from Timmy and Lorraine and Ray. And I think Larry is that person. So, we were talking last night. Where does their money go?
Jesse Trent says Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine should be in a home and let Larry BJ have it. Betty can go visit them.
Well, I mean, I agree because if they're not going to get that house, they're better off in a home care situation where they're clean and it's a cleaner environment and they get therapy or they get the care they need. And there are a lot of good homes for group homes for special needs younger people. Timmy might flourish, in a place where there are other people with special needs because they do provide a lot of activities and stuff if it's a good home. And, you know, any, I think that they would all be better off. I hope that Timmy could, it would have been nice if he could have had guardianship with Patrick and Eric, maybe. But if that's not an option, then Timmy would be better off in a different environment as well.
Victoria Hall says seems like the system has failed this family. And Denise says Eric and Patrick said there's no way they will let Timmy go into a home. So they are thinking about what they can do if Lorraine passes away. They both want to do a joint custody of Timmy.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing. But what are they? I mean, I wonder what they're thinking now. We haven't heard from Eric. I hope he hasn't changed his mind about that.
Kelly says, didn't Eric go on to meet face to face with the Omnish?
He said that he was going to, and he may be doing that now. I'm sure he has some ends to tie up. And he did make the statement that in that video. He said that he would not give up on Timmy. So I don't think we've seen the last of Eric. I think Eric is just getting his ducks in a row right now, and he needs some time to do that.
RM Guy said Eric was exhausted and probably taking time off to figure out his next step.
Exactly. But I'm really glad that Timmy is at Patrick's house right now because I don't trust BJ living next door, and I don't even trust Betty sometimes with Timmy because I have seen Betty be really. I think she's mean to Timmy sometimes. And the other day, the day that Eric came and all the chaos broke loose over that order. And, Eric, the last time Eric was there, Timmy was a nervous wreck that day. He was trying to tell Eric, I truly believe that BJ was in that camper, and Betty kept shooing him off. And he finally went over there and sit down to looking at the paper. That boy was upset. And Betty, I noticed her several times. She was irritated with Timmy. And I almost think she would have hit him if there hadn't have been people there and her on camera because she shooed him away and she wasn't nice to him. And, I don't know how she treats Timmy. I mean, I'm sure Timmy's a handful sometimes, but I
Jesus
don't know.
freaks. Oh, go
I
ahead.
hope somebody else noticed that besides me. But
Jesus freak says my son was autistic and got SSI before he passed away. So sorry to hear that, Jesus freak. Social Security does renewals and wants to know what is going on and what services are being used. How did Timmy slip through the cracks, I wonder?
You know, I question that because they social services is aware they have to be very aware of the Whittaker family in that county. And Timmy, they have to be aware of Timmy. I don't know. I'm amazed that they have this is that their living situation has not been addressed by social services and adult protection services because they all have disabilities, and I can't. I don't. I'm just sort of puzzled at that. I don't understand that.
Florida Life in the Sun says, I read on property taxes they only pay $103 a year.
Probably so because property is not that as expensive up there, and that little piece of property they have is like isn't it in the almost in the flood zone? Um, I was there was a map that I think Eric was showing the other day. So it's and the value of that house. I mean, does it have a value? So probably that's true.
Yeah, Florida with Life. It looks like this is a part two. I read on I read online that property taxes are $103 now. If they put a new home on there, their taxes would go up. Let's see. Lighthouse Girl says the legal guardian has control over Ray, Lorraine, and Timmy. I'm assuming Betty is the legal guardian.
I wonder that as well, but I have somewhere some I've heard that Timmy he doesn't have a guardian. He never needed one. So none of them may have a guardian.
Ashley1111 says you don't have to read this one unless LOL unless you just want to. As I've sent a few, exactly. Where does the money go? Always follow the money, always.
That's what I just said. What is happening to their money? They're taking in, I bet no less than $5,000 a month from SSI. And what could what are they possibly spending that on? And they have EBT as well and Medicaid. So what where's the expenses? I mean, there are expenses, but they should have there should be something to, I don't know what, and all the money that they have had given to them, there's not anything there to show for it, really.
Fernand says, Jesus, I'm so very sorry for the loss of your beloved son. Praying for you, hun. Love and hugs. Kathy says, prayer, Jesus. Florida Life in the Sun says, I think Betty yells at Timmy because he can't hear. Bad Betty says, Jesus, I'm so sorry about your son. Let's see. Deb DF Sunshine says, their home sits right in the flood zone. They probably would not even get insurance for their stuff because of the flood zone.
Right. And they don't own the house. It's in that the LLC, there's an LLC that owns it. So they may not even pay the $103 property tax.
Florida Life in the Sun says the house they're in now is owned by Hunt Brannett
Right.
LLC.
Yes, that's
The
the name.
property of 17 acres is across the street.
Right. And that property that's another thing that I question. the property, the 17 acres across the street, is still in the names of their parents. It was never probated or to to Betty, Larry, or any of the children. So basically, from what I understand, that property, anybody in that family is an heir to that property. So that would be a nightmare to locate all those people. And they would have to be bought out or they'd have to sign away their right to be an heir to that. So I'm not sure how they could have even built a house on that property because you would have to have a clear deed to the property, unless the fact that they didn't have to get a mortgage or something. I don't know how all that works, but it does raise questions, I think.
Um, Yvonne says, I think you may be a little high on their income. No, that sounds about right. And plus, I don't know what the maximum EBT is for one person, but you got 5 people there too. So probably around 6,500 that family gets.
I would bet so because they're probably at least getting $900 each SSI or SSD. I'm not. I get confused which one's which. But and then they have disabilities, and sometimes that adds maybe adds a little bit more on or something. So I think they're probably at least getting 4,500 to 5,000 a month just from SSI, and then you add in the EBT, and they do get the Medicare. I'm sure Medicare and Medicaid in Virginia, so or West Virginia. So at least I think it's probably almost that much.
Well, it'd be really interesting to find out how much they pay for rent, if they even pay for rent.
Right. And, if that company owns that house and they're just there and they never made a move, they could tell them to get out at any time if they sold that piece of property or something. Maybe so.
Well, it seems like by now somebody would have reported them, the living conditions over there
Right.
and had the place condemned.
You would think, the health department would have come in and condemned it
Mm-hmm.
because, we talked last night about they have no shower, they have no way to take a bath. And I think that to flush the toilet, they have to pour water into it because the toilet leaked and ran up that $600 um, water bill, which